Welcome to A Game of Ice and Fire, a video series devoted to a Song of Ice and Fire wargame by Cool Mini or Not. We cover all aspects of the hobby with tactics and list build videos, painting tutorials of varying levels, and battle reports. Howdy folks, this was originally intended to be a battle report for you, but in Wisconsin it decided to snowstorm and sleet and do all sorts of weird garbage in the almost middle of April, so was not able to get an opponent to come to the house here, so instead we're going to learn how to magnetize trays. Having switched over to the new basing method where things are a little bit more clean for me, I was realizing while I was playing that I did not enjoy this. My models keep falling out of the tray whenever I move them because my rings are too clean. So even when you jostle them from side to side, you can get a little wobble, and then the next thing you know, you might pick one up and just drop it a little bit, and they all go flying. So I was not originally going to magnetize my models to my bases, but after doing the cleaner flocking that I'm doing with these, I'm forcing myself to do it. So I'm a little behind myself here, but the things I've got gathered up are an old airbrush needle, tongue depressor, some magnets, and these are 1/8 by 1/16, so they're 1/16 of an inch thick, and then the I guess the circumference, no, not the circumference, the diameter is 1/8 of an inch. And I've got my cordless Dremel here with a 1/8 drill bit, and I'm just going to start by plunging holes kind of towards the middle of the bases here. I'm not trying to be super accurate, just get as close as I can. So earlier when I had said that I had my airbrush needle out, really you just need something that's kind of magnetic, or not magnetic, something metal that magnets will stick to. That could be another drill bit or something else. So I've drilled this hole a little bit off center, which isn't a big deal, and we'll see why as the tutorial goes on. And I'm going to do a second one here just for good measure, and I end up hitting that one pretty well. I also did bring out some paint that I really don't care for, and of course super glue. The Dremel that I used was fairly inexpensive, and it saved me tons of time on drilling these holes by hand. And my previous profession was as a tattoo artist, so my hands aren't so strong. I mean, not strong. I mean, like, holding a tattoo machine for years really takes a toll on you. So having to do all this manual dexterity or just hand dexterity kind of sucks. So I've got my magnet mounted up onto my airbrush needle, and I'm really just kissing the sides of the magnet with some super glue. And now my goal is to just guide this into the hole that I've created, and I'm kind of working the needle around, just trying to get the super glue to cure a little bit and catch on one of the sides. And once I feel it catch, I can pull the needle away. Now this super glue is a little bit on the old side, so I feel like it's lost some of its like quick adhesive properties, but no matter what, it still is gonna stick. It just takes a little while for it to get going. So I end up getting a little creative here and start angling the magnet back in, and I think at some point I end up using my fingers to try and get this thing to work. So you'll get to see all sorts of follies that you could run into while doing these. Now there's my finger ended up getting caught on the back of it, so the magnet stuck to my finger instead of to the plastic. So I'm just trying to weight the super glue out and let it dry. The reason why I have my tongue depressor here now is, or just in general, is that it's something that the magnet is not going to stick to. So I can do things that I'm doing now where I'm leveling the magnet out, making sure that there's not too much sticking out, and make sure that it's still sunk properly. It's just, you could use whatever you have that's not magnetic to make this happen. Now I know there are much simpler ways of magnetizing your bases to your trays or your models to your trays. Some people might take a small piece of sheet metal and either cut it into squares or circles with a hole punch or something. Or you could take I think there's like the black fridge magnets. You could take those and stick them in there. The reason why I like these, or the reason why I like doing this, is that I can make sure that these magnets are sunk in and stuck, and that they will be nice and powerful. And I don't know. I guess I don't have a problem with going through this much futzing around or a manual process. The overall, when I did the first set of bases, or the first unit and tray, it probably took me it definitely was under an hour, but over 30 minutes. So I wasn't sinking a ton of time into these, and I don't feel like it's too much work for the end result, which I'm pretty happy with. Another big reason for doing this is just for the aesthetics of having your models look like they aren't magnetized. I don't have any awkward overhang or anything like that. My models don't sit higher than they look like they would normally. They just really look like there's nothing unusual with them other than they're stuck really well. So I'm pulling out a second magnet, and I want to make sure that all of these have the same polarity. So I think earlier I was futzing around with a second magnet and just said screw it and put a bunch of them on there. So having the big stack on top of this one lets me pull the magnet off and keep the polarity that I want, because I have recently clipped my fingernails and am not able to pull the magnets the way that I would want to. So they keep slipping a little. So having the big stack of magnets on there will make sure that I've got the right polarity so that I can mix up my models, because in some of our battle reports between me and Tyler, he has his Night's Watch magnetized in a very similar fashion, and I think there's one tray or two trays that Jon Snow just can't fit on because his magnet is polarized weird, or sometimes some of the models might not fit right because they're not polarized correctly. So trying to get the polarity right on your magnets is really important when you're doing this, so you don't have to mess around with it. It sounds tedious at first, but it's really not so bad when you just stack all the magnets on one of the slots that you've already done. This one also is looking like it's being a little bit of a pain. The unfortunate side effect of running the drill through at the same size as your magnets is that there is a little bit of wiggle room, because the drill bits that Dremel produces and gives or sells with their not sells but comes with their normal or the cordless drill that I'm using, they seem to not just cut the plastic but also melt it a bit. So I mean, you probably could kick up the speed and it would cut a little bit better, and you would maybe get a more accurate hole that you put in there. But that's just something I'll have to experiment with. But there is a little bit of give on these magnets, and it's not consistent, because usually it's the spinning of the drill is making the plastic melt off a little bit. Mostly I have little carbide drits or drill bits for pinning models, but I can't use them here because I don't even know if they make carbide drill bits that are 1/8 diameter. I'll have to look that up. So I'm capping my glue here. Important for Zap-A-Gap too, because if moisture gets in there, it starts to get worse. So the thing about trying to get these models to stick on the base level is there's that cool mini or not symbol that sticks right in the middle of the model. And what I need to do is try and grind that off a bit so that I can make a flat surface to at least mark my models the way that I want to. I do apologize for the wobble. My boom for my camera is connected to the table that I work on, so it gets a little wobbly here. Just bear with me while I try and find some other solutions to that problem. So now I'm just tilting my Dremel sideways and slowly working back and forth to scroll down that Cool Mini or Not emblem. Another good reason to cap your glue for spilling. um, so I'm they definitely have attachments that can do this for you, but I don't like to. If I'm doing a bunch of these things, I don't want to have to keep switching attachments to do these different small jobs. So I just use the side of the drill bit. So the raid leader that I was showing off earlier had already had it done, but I just picked up one of the raiders that I hadn't quite finished yet. So now we got to make sure that the polarity is right for all these models when I'm sinking the magnets into them. So I'm taking 2 magnets and I'm just dropping them onto the slot so that I can mark them. So that other one I had to monkey with a little bit because it wasn't quite dry. So now I'm going to take my junky paint and take a healthy blob of it and just dab it on the top of the magnet. I want this to be wet and I want it to be able to transfer to this model. So I'm going to grab my raider and just slap him down on the slot that he would go in. You don't have to make sure the facing's perfect. I mean, I am on these models because I'm just particular about it. But you can see on that raid leader, there's a little bit of a wobble on them right now with setting them down. So if I were just to glue the magnet onto them, it wouldn't quite give me what I want out of it. But now you can see I've transferred the paint that was on top of those magnets to the model's base. This does 2 things for me. It's giving me a place to mark out where I need to drill, and it's making sure that I've got the polarity right by saying that the painted part has to go inside the model. Now, I'll get another one of these on here, but you just saw me pick off a little piece of melted plastic. I'm pretty sure this has to do with my drill speed and the drill bit, but if you don't clear that melted plastic bit off, it's just going to keep spinning and melting the plastic around it so that you end up getting a much wider hole than what you wanted. And I also don't drill through the entire model's base on these. You could if you did it on accident. It's not a big deal. I just like having a little bit of a backing to make sure that the magnet that I put into these guys sticks on. Now, you couldn't see it as well on the primed Free Folk Raider that I was working on, but we'll be able to see it a little bit better on this raid leader. You can kind of tell when you're getting close to popping through the base. Sometimes you can feel it, especially if you're holding like a Dremel like that. But now you can see that little divot. That means we're getting pretty close to drilling through the entirety of his base. So I've stopped at a really good time here, and that's just going to get covered up with whatever flock we put on them. So now that we've got these holes drilled out, we're going to be able to sink the magnets into them. So these I can just pull off and not have to worry about keeping them in the right direction or anything, because I've got that orange piece of paint on there that's telling me which side needs to go into the model's base. So I think I spend a lot of time trying to show this off because I'm rubbed most of the paint off, but there's still some there that I can see. So I'm grabbing my airbrush needle, and with this one I'm gonna get a little bit more liberal with the glue application. I don't want to go ham on this thing, but I do want a little bit more glue that's going to stick onto the bottom of the base, whereas with the drilling through the tray I didn't really have any bottom to stick to. Now if you wanted, you could put like green stuff or some other epoxy on the bottom of that if you wanted to make sure that you had a backing that didn't like fall out. But if you just get those in there, it shouldn't be a super huge deal, or once they're stuck in, they're not a huge deal. This guy went pretty easy. Just sunk him in there and then used the popsicle stick or the tongue depressor to maneuver the magnet. So on the Free Folk Raiders, at least, one of the nice things about them is the 2 points where their feet are glued down. That kind of gives you a guide of like how deep you need to sink the magnet. It's not I mean, you can also use the base to do that too, so that way it's, flush with the base. But it's just nice to have some extra guides on there to make sure you know how deep the magnet needs to go. Now, if you remember, this guy was a little bit of a pain in the butt. I think I might have flipped his magnet a couple times because the glue was a little heavy on this one and kind of treated itself like, or it started behaving more like a weird lubricant instead of something where it would just kind of stick in as easy as it did with the raid leader. So I end up futzing with this one for a while just to get it the way that I want it to, or get it the way that I want it to be. So yeah, finding out that I was needing, in quotes, to do this with Free Folk was not the best revelation that had come to me. Now I'm just clearing some junky paint that got stuck in. But really, this doesn't take as long as it seems to. Once you start hitting the stride and having the Dremel right there, as long as the magnets don't get finicky with you or disagreeable, it's really not a super long process. Now those two I'll end up doing later, but we're going to check to see if the raid leader will fit on just well, and I think we got him on there a little too soon. the glue still hasn't quite dried on him yet, so we'll pull the magnet off and put it back in him and let those guys sit for a little bit longer. I'll do the rest of the tray soonish, but and preferably, I think when it comes to the trays, doing these before you paint it is better because the magnets are going to get scratched up a little. So having as much paint layers, or as many paint layers built up on there as possible, probably something you want. Here is a finished tray that I accomplished earlier today. Now, I don't fling my models around all willy-nilly, but you can beat on the trays a little bit, shake them around, and hold them sideways, and they're not going too far. I mean, it would take a little bit more effort to knock these out than what I'm giving, or what you would normally give. And you can already see that some of these magnets are not perfectly center, so you wouldn't think that all these different models could change places on the tray, but they can. The magnet is strong enough to hold them just barely, or not just barely, but it's strong enough to hold them in place without any issues. These are pretty lightweight models, so I think it worked out pretty slick, and I shouldn't have any real issues in the long run with these popping out or anything. The magnets are pretty nice and solid in there, and that's that. In terms of knowing where to get magnets, I usually will buy mine off of random sellers on eBay. I know Gale Force 9 sells a pack of magnets that you can usually pick up at your local game store, but magnets are extremely inexpensive, so I like to support local game stores, but when it comes to magnets, I don't like paying $15 for it's almost a tenth of the number of magnets that you will get just purchasing them from elsewhere. Also, I think with some of these other companies, you don't end up. There are some packs where they, like, some game store owners just won't order the ones that have like the one size. They order the variety packs, and those aren't going to get you very far when you've got 150 models to magnetize. So picking up a pack of 200 to 1,000 magnets for $15 online is going to get you a little bit further. So just keep an eye out for those, and don't spend more money on magnets than what you need to, because these ones are quite strong, and they're not going to set you back a ton. If you have any other questions about magnetizing bases, feel free to leave some comments below. Otherwise, you can burn over to our Facebook page, Big Top Gaming. I'll leave a link in the description, and give us a like there. I'll also answer questions, pretty responsive to messages. And if you have any requests, that's probably the best place to drop them. My normal game night is just tomorrow from now. So hopefully, if we don't have any new players to walk through the game. I should have some battle report footage to put up, so I won't have to keep making tutorial videos. Not that I don't like making them, but it has been a while since I put up a game, and I would like to do so. So stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel. You can click the bell just below, and that's going to let YouTube notify you when I post a new video, because sometimes there's a bit of a lag when I upload them to YouTube and when I post them on the Facebook page or the Song of Ice and Fire page. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I look forward to making the next video for you.